my guest, the wonderful Sofia Giblin. Have I said
Hello.
that right? Yes.
Yes, you have.
I've been stalking Sophia for a while now because she does such amazing things. So Sophia has an amazing podcast called Treasure Time, which is little bite-sized nuggets for parents, teachers, carers, whoever, on building communication through play with their children. I'm sure you'll pick me up on whether I do anything wrong. So there's the Facebook page Treasure Time, there's a podcast Treasure Time, but Sophia also set up a Clear Sky Children's Charity when you were very young. I'm impressed with the amount you've achieved to say you're still a baby.
Ah, I'm not sure about that, but
Well,
yeah.
compared to some, you are. So I'm going to hand over the reins to Sophia and let her just give a bit of backstory or say anything that I've missed out about the wonderful things that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here today. Really happy to speak with you. And yeah, I'm sure that you and I are going to have lots of things to talk about because our backgrounds are very similar. Yeah, so my story kind of starts back in, well, actually, it starts back when I was 15. I always tell this story because I think it's important to know, like, when you look back, you can join up the dots and you can see where you've come from and why. So when I was 15, sadly I went through some trauma in my life. I lost my mum when I was a teenager, actually when I was doing my GCSE exams.
Wow.
So a difficult age anyway.
Yeah.
And it was a very short illness that she had. She had cancer and she passed away within sort of 3 months of diagnosis.
Wow.
Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of time to prepare. And also, I've had conversations with my dad recently where he said, we never even had conversations about her dying. Like, we just didn't think it was going to happen. She had such strong belief that she was going to fight it.
Yeah.
But sadly, she didn't. And so what happened is that, obviously, very, very difficult for the whole family. And for me in particular, I'm the eldest child of 4, and I'm also a girl. So I think what can naturally happen is that you get put a bit into that mum role.
That role, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I recognise that, like, had to support my siblings and my dad and also do my exams. And then it was that sort of sensitive time in life as well where you're trying to decide what you do next. And all my friends are like going off to do their A levels and thinking about going to university and getting jobs. And I was just in a point where I was just like, I don't want to go forwards, I want to go backwards. And I think that's quite natural and quite a normal part of the grieving process as well. But
as an adult, we can work all that out. But as a young person, which you are, I think 15-year-olds think that they've got it all sorted, and then a trauma happens, and suddenly you just want your mum, and your mum wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. And like going through all those stages of growing up at that age as well.
Yeah.
It was really tough, and I didn't really even acknowledge the severity of the trauma probably until like a few years ago, I would say. Like,
understandable.
Survival mode kicks in. You do what you've got to do to get through. And I found myself kind of going through the motions. I did my A levels, but I didn't study. I got kicked off a few because I wasn't showing up, and I didn't want to go to university, but all my friends were doing it, and my dad was like, please just go, because for him, being contained within education helped him to feel better, that I was kind of on track. And he goes, just go to university and go and get a degree in business, and then you can get a nice little marketing job, because he works in sales and marketing, and at the end of it, and that'll be that. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know what else I'm doing, so I'll do it. So I kind of followed the path without really having any. I didn't do it very consciously or intentionally, but I came out of university.
At that time, you weren't really doing anything very consciously. You kind of just go into overdrive. You separate out from things to just function.
Yeah, absolutely. Just get through the days. That's how it was. So I kind of went through life a bit unconsciously until I came out of university, and I had this degree, and then I was like, now what? Like, what do I do now? And so I was kind of like looking for a bit of inspiration for what I do. Like, I had this degree in business, but I also had, worked with children either side of going to university. And children with profound and multiple learning disabilities in a school setting, and I absolutely loved the work. And I didn't sort of realize it till I looked back, but there's a very common theme for me here about the types of ways that I like to work with people, and a lot of the time it is around how we communicate. And obviously when you're working with children that have got profound multiple learning disabilities, you have to find another way to communicate, because words just don't do it. And we'll pick up the theme probably as we go along.
100%, I would imagine.
But so I was looking around for some inspiration. I was about 23, and my cousin was training at the time. She'd done a degree in psychology, and then she'd come out and was doing training in play therapy. And I was like, what is play therapy? I've never heard of this thing.
We just play naturally. What's the therapy bit?
Exactly. Sounds like a bit wishy-washy to me. A bit fluffy. And she goes, well, it's like counselling for children, psychotherapy for children, but using play and creativity instead of words to help them to process their difficult feelings and come to some resolutions and understanding about the world around them. And it was like a little light bulb went off in my head. I was like, oh my God,
this is it.
Wouldn't that have been so helpful for me? Even at 15 years old, I didn't have the words to articulate what it was that I needed. And especially then for my younger siblings, my youngest sister was only 9 at the time, so it took her a really long time to kind of come to terms with what's happening and process it. So I was kind of then on a mission. I'd found a little bit of inspiration, and I started to follow that trail, and I had lots of conversations with her about like, what are the challenges that you have. And she was like, well, I'm going to be a play therapist, I'll be qualified, but there's no jobs out there for play therapists. You have to set up your own practice. And she was like, but I don't really want to do that. Like I want to be a therapist. I want to do the work with kids. And I was like, interesting. And then I thought, and then the other thing she said to me was like, well, people can't really afford play therapy, or schools I'm trying to get in touch with here, they don't have the budget for it. It's always a big barrier. And I was like, okay, so there's no jobs and there's no funding, so what could I do that would make a difference, that would actually help more children to access play therapy through their school? Because I knew in my own experience that in a trauma situation, sometimes school is the only containing space that you have. And you maybe don't necessarily have parents that are able to take you off to access sessions. Or you might, but for lots of kids it's not a possibility. So I was like, okay, do you know what, I'm gonna try something really different here, and I'm gonna set up a charity to provide the funding aspect for therapy, make it subsidized, or even, I was thinking at the time, free for schools, and create jobs for therapists so that they can do what they love and that children can get the help that they need.
Amazing.
Yes. So
seriously, I'm in awe for you to think, right, this is a problem, what's the solution, I can do this. There was no barriers. You just thought, I'm just gonna run with this.
I thought I'd just try it, because I sort of like in between as well, I'd been doing a little bit of freelance volunteer fundraising work. So I was learning about how fundraising, I wasn't particularly thinking I'd go into the charity sector, but it seemed to fit with my skills, and that's what I keep sort of coming back to, is like, we have these specific gifts that we're given, and if you know what your gifts are, it's quite easy for you to kind of go, oh, okay, well, that fits my skills and I can do it quite naturally and it flows. So I'll give it a go. And I think that's how it was for me with setting up a charity. I was like, well, I've tried a few different aspects of, I have a degree in business and I've worked with children, and I've now got a bit of fundraising experience, so I'm just going to see how far I can push this and play it a bit like a game. And I remember sort of not really thinking, I had a big vision. I wanted children across the UK to have access to play therapy, every child that needed it in a school. And obviously that's it'd be a huge undertaking and require a lot of funding and all those sorts of things. But pinning myself to like a really big vision helped me to move forward, because I became very purpose driven and not motivated by the things that my peers were being motivated by, like money and status and graduate jobs and all that stuff. this was also at the time of the recession, so I was really struggling to get any kind of job in 2000, back in 2008 as well.
Yeah.
As a
See, I
graduate.
love that. I don't know whether you've heard of him. I studied a lot of Michael Neal, which he did a brilliant book called Creating the Impossible.
Oh,
And
okay.
what you're saying is exactly what he says, is aim to create the impossible. You know, take all the structure and the boundaries off it and just go for the stars, and you will hit so much along the way. And it sounds
Absolutely.
like that what you did. You knew this is really difficult time to be doing this. This is, you know, to try and connect the fundraising and the play therapy and work with children in need and everything. It's too much. A lot of people would have said, yeah, I can't do that. But you thought, I'm gonna see how far I can go with it.
Yeah, I think I really feel like I had to do it. I didn't feel like I had another choice. And sort of more recently, I've been reflecting on that and thinking, what is that about me? And I think it was just kicking in the survive. You know, I have to do something with this energy of challenge, and I have to channel it somewhere, because if I don't, you know, it was showing up in all sorts of different areas of my life with like, you know, grief, obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
anxiety, low mood, and I was struggling, and I thought I need to do something creative with this. I mean, I maybe didn't have those conscious thoughts, but my subconscious knew that I needed to channel.
Yeah.
And
And
so
I
that's
think
what I
that
did.
there's part of us as caregivers in whatever area that is, that we are better together.
Mm,
I get so much from seeing clients. It's
mm,
a two-way street. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure they don't realize it when we're in a room together, but I'm in the process as well as them. So I would
mm.
imagine, you know, you helping the schools and the children access this in a roundabout way was also you helping yourself through whatever you've been through as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I felt, well, yeah, the other thing that I also did in the process was I started the charity with kind of the knowledge and experience I had. And I thought, you know, I don't need to know too much about play therapy for me to do this. You know, I just need use my business brain.
Yeah.
But then as more as I went on, and I thought, actually, I want to understand this a little bit more. I thought, if I'm going to do this, I want to get under the skin of it. I want to know what it is, the mechanisms and how it works and why it works. And so I decided to go off and train in play therapy, which is what I did next.
That's amazing. So I have come across it as I was a foster carer for 12 years, and one of the first long-term placements that we had, he was diagnosed with everything, you know, ADHD, oppositional defiance disorder, a whole ream of things. So he accessed play therapy. So, but we didn't get to know what went on in that room. You know, we dropped him off. He stayed there for an hour. We picked him up, and all he would say to us was that usually he'd had a bacon sandwich. That was the only information that we got from him.
Uh-huh.
So I can understand, you know, it being therapy, that it is confidential. It's a safe space for a child to express whatever it needs to in that room.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know much about play therapy.
Okay.
So I'm
Yeah.
so interested in everything.
Oh yeah, well, we'll talk about that a little bit more, because I suppose I came from not having any psychology background, no therapeutic training, but obviously experience working with children. So I kind of went into play therapy with a bit of an open mind
Yeah.
about what it meant. And I honestly, I thought it was more about like what you do. Sorry, can you hear that?
Fine, that's fine. Carry on.
Someone's hoovering my front door.
Hoovering, well, let them carry on, don't stop them.
So I went into play therapy with quite an open mind, and I honestly thought it was like, well, the games and the things that you do, you know, that's what makes the difference, right, with the child. And it's all about, you know, how you kind of structure that for them to help them move through different emotions and feelings. But what I quickly came to learn in my training is that it is very much about creating for children that safe relationship and working on secure attachment in a space by being consistent and predictable and all the things that you are as a therapist, that to children mean the absolute world whilst they're building their attachment blueprint. And then the play is a vehicle to develop that relationship. And I mean, the play also has a myriad of wonderful benefits in helping children to learn. It gives them an outlet to express. So where they don't have words, you'll see them playing things out that, and you might think as a therapist, I wonder what might be going on here, or what might have happened,
Yeah.
what trauma they might be processing. But really, it's not actually even for us to know sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
We witness the unfolding of the process,
Yeah.
and we hold space for it, and we respond to the child in a way like you do in any kind of therapy that holds up a mirror to them.
I think with this particular looked after child that we had, he would talk to me behind a door. He didn't like eye contact. It really made him feel nervous and uncomfortable. So he would literally stand behind a door and talk to me through the door. And he would talk about really in-depth things while he was stirring the gravy at Sunday dinner, when there wasn't that face-to-face, sit down and talk to me type of setup, which he'd shut down. So I can imagine, even though a child is playing with a game, the thought processes and the little chats that go on, regardless, like you said, providing that safe space is so important for children, so important. And the consistency and the trust, and you being separate from the trauma somehow, not knowing the history and everything about them is a wonderful place to start with some children.
Absolutely. Acknowledging that they are whoever they want to be.
Yeah.
And so often we can project our wants and wishes onto children and try and fit them into a mold of behavior and being pleasing to adults. And play therapy gives them this space where they can be what they want to be and who they want to be, with somebody who doesn't judge them and who can understand the language that they're using. So it's really powerful, and it's not just just playing. We'll definitely talk more about the amazing benefits of play, but honestly, when I did my play therapy training, it was very experiential. So I was doing lots of the play therapy activities with another trainee therapist, and I'd be doing a sand tray or a painting or using clay, some kind of creative form of expression, and I would uncover so much about my own trauma just through doing a creative activity that I wasn't able to access verbally. It unlocks a whole other side of the subconscious that we don't maybe even know is there.
And I think, I work a lot with children and parents, and one of the things I often say, it's in our instinct to ask children, why did you do that? What are you thinking? And lots of questions. And often they come back with, I don't know. And the honest answer is they don't. They can't, like you say, they can't articulate it. But even more than that, sometimes they don't know why they do what they do when they do it. And I can honestly say that the majority of the time, I don't know why I do certain things. If somebody tried to pinpoint me to say, why did you do that? Well, I don't know. It just felt right at the time. And children communicate through their behavior. When we're close to it, it feels like it's aimed at us as parents. They're just doing that to wind me up. They're just doing it to annoy me. They know I'm tired, so they're just trying to wind. And that's not the case often. Well, it's not the case at all, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's really interesting what you said about your foster son talking through the door. It's part of it of play therapy is like the most subtle things that you can think about that we wouldn't even take into consideration as adults. That you have to start thinking it as if you're a brand new person. Like
think
a child.
alien. That's one of the things I used to say. Think alien, as if an alien's just landed and you're trying to explain to them how we communicate.
Yes, exactly. And like, what might they need to, for us to feel safe? And that point of focus, like you said, some children find eye contact really way too intimidating and it's too scary. So what happens in a play therapy session is that you recognize that quite quickly, and then you think about your body language and your facial expression and how it is that you actually are communicating, so that you can facilitate a safe activity where maybe you're side by side with the child, shoulder to shoulder, and you're both looking at a game or a piece of paper. And that becomes the container for the relationship, and the, like you said, the chat about the things that might have happened that they're not even thinking about, that it's just coming out because it feels safe.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, you've got the other kids who love, or who need, they crave your attention, so they want your eye contact all the time. And then the trick there is to get them actually focusing off you and onto an activity. So again, it's all about the dynamics of that relationship and how it's managed, and how we use play to facilitate that.
And what you say, it just really resonates with me. I can remember when I was doing my psychotherapy training, we learned that, right, this is what's going on and this is what happens. So you think, right, I've got it sussed. And then they go, but the complete opposite can happen. So we need to be mindful of that as well. And then there's a grey area in the middle. We are all unique. Not only is the trauma and the chaos that some children go through unique to them, but their personalities, how they've shaped as a person, whether they're, like you say, they need the attention, or whether the attention is just too overwhelming and they want to be invisible. So the spectrum, it is the relationship. That's how you get to know what's going on a lot of the time.
Absolutely. And I did find it really quite fascinating, actually, that how, you can almost pick up on it, whether a child finds attention overwhelming, or they crave it, what kind of relationships or experiences they might be having at home. And how that behavior is mostly derived from learned messages that they're getting at home, that maybe they're when they're naughty, they should be quiet and, get away from me. And, then it might breed more of that repressed behavior and introversion and under stress. Or if it's quite inconsistent and lacking boundaries, children will often play up more so that they can to test and see. And I started to think about it, and I was like, wouldn't it be great if more parents knew that this is what's actually going on, and that their parents' behavior and the way that we respond to children has a direct correlation to the way that children behave. And it's not just them being naughty, it's them so often just trying to keep safe.
And that was one of the things that started me on my road to psychotherapy. I did something, it's an American approach called the nurtured heart approach, and it talks an awful lot about every interaction with another living thing is an exchange of energy, whether that's positive energy or negative energy, but any energy is better than none. So, even in the worst case scenarios with some of these children, negative energy is a connection. They're not getting, it's kind of like a McDonald's as opposed to a Sunday dinner. The attention, if you think of that as nutritional energy, it's very minimal with a McDonald's and negative energy. But give them a Sunday dinner with lots of, positive intent, and the praise for being as well as praise for doing was always really important to me. Do you know what I mean? It's not about being a high achiever. Sometimes it's about the effort that child's put in to just get out of bed and go to school in the morning. That can be massive to some children.
Absolutely. I was listening to your podcast, so you talked about that, praise for being rather than praise for doing. And it's something that is so unconscious to us when we work with children, or we have children. If we've not looked at this, it's what messages do we give, literally verbally, but also non-verbally with our body language and facial expression, because children are so tuned in. They just have, it's like their sense for picking up, I suppose it's their sense for picking up danger, actually. I think it's much more acute than ours in lots of ways.
It makes sense that we kind of lose the ability to have as adults. I read somewhere as well, I'm not sure whether you know this statistic, but there's something like it's only 7% of our communication is done through words. It's ridiculous to say that that's how most of us communicate with each other, and yet 7%, that's the rest is the tone of the voice, the intonation, the body language. Fascinating.
Absolutely. And if you think that, like, if a child's experience has been very kind of maybe predominantly negative facial expressions and body language, they assign meaning to what that is. And then obviously as when they see those facial expressions and body language, that's how they're then interpreting the world. So even if it's not meant in a malicious or a nasty way, children will still make a meaning from it.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so important when we're building relationships with children that we're super mindful of absolutely every way that we're communicating, not just with the words.
Yeah. And you know, following on from that, I had 2 children when I first started my nursery nursing training a long time ago, and I can remember doing my training thinking, how have my children survived? I've done everything wrong. Do you know what I mean? They're going to be horrendous adults. They're not. They're wonderful human beings. But I think mummy guilt is a big thing that I see a lot of the time. That, you know, if I'd have known then what I know now, I would have done it different. So, you know, one of my mottos that I use is, you know, I'm perfectly aware I'm not a perfect parent. That's because nice. We've got our own stuff going on. And I would imagine even in that room with that child, when you're practicing, you're bringing part of you into that room. We can't not. That's how we build relationships. So it's about, you know, being kind to ourselves in amongst everything that we're going on as well, to me is important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that I kind of recognize is, or that I, you know, that I think should give everybody hope, is that it's not about being perfect. The research shows that it's about being good enough, and good enough even is less than 50% of the time being, you know, predictable, responsive and warm. And I'm sure that, you know, most people are obviously doing a good enough job. But the other thing is that we are changeable beings. It's not fixed in stone. We can repair. That's the whole job of the relationship, is that when there's a break or a rupture in the relationship, it's how we repair it that's more important than never having any ruptures in the relationship, because there's always, that's just the way that relationships work. They're designed to work like that.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the theories that I use in transactional analysis is called ages and stages, where we go through certain psychological stages, but then throughout our life, we recycle it over and over and over again. So those building blocks that maybe weren't put there, you know, in the first stage, we can fill them in. And one of the things with this particular looked after child, that with reflection, we were a really good placement for him, because I had a 6-month-old son when he came to us.
Wow.
So the things I was doing with my son, he joined in. He did messy play and water play and finger painting, and he would sit at the end of the bed with us while I read my son a bedtime story. So unbeknownst to me at that time, I was, you know, reparenting him to a certain extent, but he was a bystander. It wasn't, the focus wasn't on him, which worked really well for him, but he was part of it. Yeah. I think by accident I did quite a few things. Hadn't got a clue what I was doing at the time. It just happened. But yeah. And he's amazing now. He's got 2 boys of his own, and he's doing absolutely fantastic. And he was officially undiagnosed with ADHD, which I take great pride in. We knew he hadn't got it. He'd just come from a chaotic background. So the symptoms and what he was displaying was typical ADHD, but yeah, he was undiagnosed. So that's one of the things I get on my soapbox, is about diagnoses and labels for children. It's
absolutely.
So it's fantastic. So tell me about the podcast and the treasure time that you do. How can people access all this wonderful knowledge that you've got?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so when I you know, I sort of set the charity up, and then it kind of grew and grew and grew, and it got to a point in 2019 where I kind of thought, okay, well, it's definitely grown out of its baby and maybe even its child stage now. It's an adolescent, and it needs somebody else to hold its hand through the next stages. So I left my role as the CEO in 2019. What I wanted to do over that period was, you know, I'd been thinking more and more about how, well, if parents had some of these skills, play therapy skills, but how could that positively impact on children's mental health, and also make parents feel really empowered that they have some skills and strategies to help develop that relationship. So I went on to set up Treasure Time, which is I actually did my master's in play therapy on Treasure Time, and what I decided to do was like, okay, can I take some play therapy skills and teach them to parents digitally through an online course, and then see a positive improvement in the relationship at home, and give parents an opportunity to kind of try out some of the skills and have more time playing with their children.
Yeah.
And the results from the masters were really positive. You know, it saw parents' stress levels reduced because all of a sudden the communication was better between themselves and the child. They understood each other more. There was more kindness and empathy from the children, reduced emotional challenges. And so I was like, wow, they were like, there's really onto something here. Like this is, and what I did was I kind of thought, there's no way that you can teach parents 7 years worth of therapy knowledge in a really short space of time. So I thought, okay, what happens if we strip it right back? Like, it doesn't have to be that deep. It can be, what are the practical things that we can actually do? And I think, honestly, the thing that makes all the difference is playing with the children. So that's what Treasure Time is. It teaches you, it gives you structure to do 6 child-led playtimes with your children, and teaches parents how to use child-led play skills. And child-led just means that we allow the child to be completely in control during that time. It's that blank canvas. They can be who they want to be. They can take charge in life where they maybe have no control over most things.
Which sounds really simple, but as a parent, it's really difficult to do. We do tend to direct our children. You know, if they're playing with a toy in an inappropriate way, we'll correct them and say, no, you don't do it like that, you do it like this. Does it really matter how they're playing with it? My daughter does it. I laugh at her. She'll start colouring and then she'll just take over the picture, you know, and my grandson Alfie, he's run off, he's doing something else, and my daughter's still sitting there colouring in the pictures. It's really difficult to just take a back step as a parent and not be so directive with play.
Yeah, I see it quite a lot. And I wonder if it's because obviously our jobs as parents are to teach and guide and nurture children. And so we just get, you know, it's a default role to, you know, showing children how the world works. And that's okay. But it's also good to include some child-led play. So even if, you know, Treasure Time, we teach you to put aside 30 minutes a week, up to 30 minutes, if you can manage 30 minutes a week, at the same time, the same day, in the same room, with the same stuff. And that's the opportunity for the child to be in charge. And that kind of container of consistency and predictability helps children to feel safe. It also helps them to know and predict that they're going to have some time with you coming up. So they maybe are less attention hungry during the week. You know, they're going to get their roast dinner.
Love it.
Once a week, rather than asking you for McDonald's every day. And it also, you know, then it gives you the opportunity to practice what it means to be child-led in 30 minutes of very contained time. So it means that you don't have to do this all the time, which is too big, but actually just give 30 minutes to it a week. And outside that 30 minutes, it's okay for you to be the teacher and the guide. But to give them an experience of what it's like to be in charge, give your children that experience, teaches them independence, problem solving skills, creativity, imagination, all of that really rich stuff can happen in just 30 minutes of play a week.
I love it. That's amazing. I love the way that you've just stripped it back, because you think, oh, here we go, it's another course every day for 3 hours a day, I've got to commit to doing this. And it's not.
No, it's not. It is very different. And like, it's interesting kind of looking out there in the market, because most courses are quite, I mean, I say this, maybe you know differently, but I would say that most stuff to do with children is quite educational.
Yes.
Work, even if it's more CBT based, like working on values and beliefs and stuff like that, it's quite logical and conscious. Whereas this stuff is very subconscious. It's very felt experience of actually allowing the child to have a different type of relationship with you, and that builds up this attachment blueprint of security, which is what is shown to give children the best outcomes across their whole lifespan. And what everybody wants for their children, but we may not necessarily know, like, how on earth do you do that? I mean, that's probably the big question on most people's lips, is how do you make or grow a well-rounded and a well-developed child when there are challenges and we have our own stuff and there's lots of stress. And actually it can be as simple as just like dedicating 30 minutes a week to doing something differently and learning it.
And I just love the concept of that. I talk a lot with parents and children about, resilience and having an inner wisdom. Often as parents, we just need to listen to ourselves. People say, oh no, there needs to be structure and we need to do this and we need to teach our children and we need to read with them and we need to do this and this and this. And often parents just want to sit and play. But there's a little part saying it's not enough.
Yeah.
I need to do more. I need to have structure. I need to have workbooks. I need to have a star chart. I need to do all this other stuff. Whereas if we just say, actually, no, just being together in a safe space and seeing what happens. Yes, we need a bit of structure. We need, certain things in that room with us. But that can be phenomenal for some parents as well as children to just take the foot off the gas.
Absolutely. And I think if what you said earlier about parents that want to join in the play or like take over the play, that can actually be a need within us to have more play in our lives.
Yeah.
And if you're noticing that actually you find it very difficult to just sit back and allow your child to play, ask yourself, where am I getting to play? Because it might be that you need to find some time for yourself to do something.
That's a really, really important thing is, it is about us as well. And particularly homeschooling and lockdown and working from home and everything else, self-care isn't selfish. It's a really important thing that we all need to be mindful of. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm loving it. So I want to do one of these courses. I want to come and do one of them. I think it's amazing. The fact that it's stripped down. Did you say 6 pillars? Is that how it's designed?
Yeah. So it's like 6 play times.
Right.
And I've literally stripped it back to the most basic bones that anybody could access. And you just do as I say, basically.
Love it. I like that.
Because if you as a parent do as I say, then you create the container for the child to do how they want. Okay. So it's and what I give you is 6 play times, so that each week you just have to put a few things in place, like a specific place and a time and a note on the door that says do not disturb and protecting the space. And then the play times are all structured with a specific activity which is designed to teach or for the child to experience a different skill. And I say teach, but I don't really mean teach.
Yes,
because
yeah.
In the play, children are learning naturally anyway. So we don't really have to do anything in this sense. We just give them the space. So we work on things like storytelling and problem solving and creativity, those types of things which are really important. And once you've done the 6 weeks, the whole idea is that you have enough skills to just allow your child to then lead it going forward. So you just keep the safe container of space and time and materials, and then let your child tell you what they want to do this week and how they want to do it, and then keep that going on forever.
And give them the opportunity, they will do that. Like I said, my grandson is 2.5, and he spent, it must have been a good hour, and that's not an exaggeration, playing with a camera tripod in the kitchen. That tripod became so many different things, and he was just going, follow me, and he was definitely directing the play. It's a natural thing, but we tend to, I don't want to say knock it out of children, because that sounds, a bit strong, but we do direct them in what they need to be doing with play.
Yeah, exactly. And if we want children to develop a real healthy sense of what is it that they really like, so that when they get to the teenage years, they've got a strong sense of self, and they know themselves well, so that then they don't succumb to things like peer pressures, which obviously then become a bit of a concern. And then when they become an adult, they have a real sense of the direction that they want to take their life, and they feel in control. They're not a victim to their life or a victim to their circumstances where they feel they have absolutely no power, because they've learned very early on, actually, I get to choose what I do. I get to choose what I like. And I have respect from adults. And in that way, we mentioned it right at the beginning, kind of fitting children into the mold. This time allows them to create their own mold.
Yeah.
And we start to learn more about them as well,
Yeah.
and what they like and how they like to do things. We might start to notice, actually, he needs a little bit more time than I give him to do these specific tasks. So tomorrow, when I'm asking him to put his shoes on, I'll give him an extra 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't impact on the child's self-esteem that they can't do it quick enough or well enough, and those types of things.
The only other thing that kind of cropped up when you were talking earlier on is, how would you, and I'm putting you on the spot here, I do apologise, if you've got 4 children, is it you do 4 children together in a room? Is it that you do individual time with each individual child? How does that work?
It's individual time with an individual child.
Okay.
And obviously, you know, I understand that logistically that can be a challenge. And there are ways that we can manage that as well by, you know, creating time containers for other children and activities if we can, or if we're fortunate enough to have somebody else who can look after other children during that time, then that's great. But
children can be really respectful if they know that they're getting their slot as well.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're teaching. It's those really subtle things that we can't just say it and expect a child to understand how to respect time. Like, they have to experience how to respect time, and fairness is a thing that happens. You know, it's all children. Lots of children have challenges when they feel that something is unfair, but it's just that they don't feel like they're getting enough, and that's what it is. So we have to sort of look at that and go, okay, well, maybe they need their own time.
Yeah.
And I always recommend that parents kind of, if you think, actually, I have got 4 children and there's no way I could manage 2 hours a week of doing individual time, then do it one at a time for 6 weeks, and start with the children who you feel have the greatest need first.
Yeah.
Just in the same way that you would take a child that fell out of a tree with a broken arm to the hospital first. Focus on that child and their needs.
Yeah. It's brilliant. So there will be some show notes with this where I'll put all the websites and everything that you do, so people can get little snippets in the podcast. Is that what the podcast is about? Little snippets of what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. In the podcast, we launched it last year during the first lockdown, because actually we wanted to give some of the Treasure Time principles and try and apply them to everyday life, the experiences that people were going through during lockdown. So, for example, homeschooling and all of those types of difficult things that were happening for the first time, using some of the Treasure Time principles, like, you know, actually we have an opportunity to slow down and notice what we're giving, not hurrying our children maybe, or you know, allowing them to choose for themselves what it is they want to have for breakfast this morning. And there's just little ways that you can sprinkle the principles in every single day, and then do a more intensive 30 minutes of the playtime together with the child. So if you haven't got time to do 30 minutes, just listen to the podcast and try out some of the strategies that we've left in there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So I just want to say thank you so much, and I have no doubts I will have you back again at some point, because literally I feel like I've stopped you halfway through. There's just so much I want to pick your brains with, that I can then use, you know, as a therapist. You know, Play-Doh is one of the favorite things in the whole world for me when I'm working with children. You know, we just play with Play-Doh and you know, shoot the breeze, just to get to know each other. It's a lot for children to open up to somebody that they've never met before. So, you know, as a parent, you're halfway there because they already know you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The hard part is done, really. The next is enhancing and enriching what you've got.
And do it for yourself as well. You get so much out of it, you know, having that safe space where you switch off from everything and it's just what's in that room, in that container that you've, you know, made with that child. You don't need to worry about cooking the tea or the washing or whatever it is. You can focus for half an hour too.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. You're an absolute star, Sophia. Thank you so much for being part of this, and hopefully we'll speak again very soon.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.